This is an interview with Mr. Edward B. Thompson for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley, presently at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Today is May 28th, 1997.
So see, tomorrow I have to go take chemo
Oh, is that every Thursday?
every Thursday. If I can take it tomorrow.
Well, Mr. Thompson, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to me today about yourself and about Birmingham, because we know that this is a very important topic in the development of how Birmingham actually evolves into what it is today because of foundation. So thank you for taking time out.
Well, thank you for having me because I've been here quite some years.
That's right. I'd just like to know about your family background. You were born here in Birmingham, is that correct?
Yes, I was born here. I even remember my doctor's name, Dr. Mason. I did not know his initials, but he was a doctor here. And you know, we were born at home. Later we had Children's Hospital, but I was born right there on 8th Avenue, number 8th Avenue North, West now. And it's there now, right across the Smithfield Library in the White House.
Oh, run around.
Not on the corner, the third one off the corner to the right.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's still standing.
Still
The old
standing.
house.
Yeah, my sister owned
No,
it.
Were your parents from Birmingham?
Yes.
Originally from Birmingham.
Yes.
Now, that in itself, I guess, is rather significant because Birmingham, of course, at that time was a relatively young city, and people started to migrate into Birmingham usually from the Black Belt.
Well, from the nearest I can get, on the Thompson side, on the Thompson side of the family, we came from Huttsboro, Alabama. I've only been there once.
Where is Hudson?
I can't tell you. I've only been there once. And we went there, I think it must have been about 1930 something. As a young boy, and I rode a billy goat there, and then billy goat threw me. It was at Huttsboro. That's where my grandfather came from.
Right.
My mother's mother, if that's what you said, how we got here.
Yes.
She came from Selma. Her mother was a slave, and she came from Selma.
Okay.
My grandfather was a freedman, came from Canton, Ohio, and he was a college graduate in 1869 or somewhere in there from Wilberforce University in Xenia, Ohio. He moved from Canton to Selma. That's where he met my grandmother, because she was at school at Selma University, and he was a professor there.
Oh, okay. So he came down after graduating from Wilberforce to teach at Selma University.
Yes, and founded Daniel Payne
Here.
that moved here from Selma. See, Daniel Payne moved out of Selma University, and he founded Daniel Payne because he was affiliated with the AME Church. And that's how that got here.
So you have a background of educators that go way back in your family.
Yes.
What about siblings? How many brothers and sisters?
I had a brother and a sister. Both of them are deceased. My father's first wife passed. Then I have a sister now who's alive in St. Louis. And I am the one. That's the only thing we had. We had 4 in our family.
What part of town that you live in? It's Smithfield. Tell me a little about Smithfield.
That's it. Well, you see, Smithfield is very famous because of how it got its name.
Yes.
We Birmingham's first black, and we would call everything else then, were living around the terminal station. And we were moved, when we moved to Upper Smithfield, and I'm calling from 16th Street, Upper Smithfield.
Okay.
We moved into there. Then we moved all the way down to Center Street, where the library is now. And that's where the whites started. And that was known as Smith's Field. Miss Dr. Smith, that lived in College Hills. And that's why the streets were named Louise and Thomas. He named them after his children. That was Smithfield. And where's 3rd Street now is Joseph.
Right.
And so that's how that got to be what it is.
So the whites lived west of Center Street.
Yes, yes.
And the blacks lived.
Yeah, we didn't go on that further. We went down to Davis Ditch, which was 1st Street West.
But you didn't.
Now, they had the school, see the school, Graymont School there.
Right.
We had school, Graymont School on Graymont Avenue now, which is 5th Avenue. That's Hill now, but it was named Graymont. You had Graymont.
That's Graymont Colored School.
You didn't call it colored.
See, that's what Riley School was. Riley was the Riley Colored School.
Yeah,
They had it on the building.
Well, it didn't matter. You know who used to be principal at? Arthur Shores.
At Hill?
I think he was the principal. He was either principal there or he was the school teacher before he became a lawyer.
Yeah. Now, wasn't he principal at
Weston? Well, he was down there too, but something, yeah. I think that's because Brunetta C. Hill evidently had that. That was her school. She was a lady. This man, that's what she was.
Was she principal of this?
Yes, she was principal of Graymont.
Okay. And
then,
and then after she passed on, they named the school after
named her Brunetta C. Hill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about the community of Smithfield. How would you describe that community?
Oh my goodness. Some of the better homes were built in that community. Let me give you names, and I'm not name dropping, I'm just giving you some names
Sure, that's
of the better homes. T.C. Wyndham, I think you've heard of him, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
Built the Masonic Temple.
Yeah, architect.
He lived right there, where 8th Avenue and 8th Avenue and where the service station is.
Right.
Yeah, that's his house. It was his house right to the left of us. He lived there.
To the left, going toward town.
Yeah, going to a town. He had the houses there.
Right.
Okay. That's where 8th Avenue Plaza is now with some of his property.
Right.
Dr. Parker lived in Smithfield.
Okay.
Dr. Brown, that
Brown House.
Brown House.
Right.
They lived there.
Now,
Blunt.
who was Dr. Brown?
Dr. Brown was a physician. Yeah. That was Mrs. Marge Handy's father. And they lived where the big house is. And if you notice Dr. Parker's house, and right next to Dr. Parker was a lawyer, our lawyer. We had 2 lawyers. One lived on Enon Ridge, and the other lived down there, and that was Lawyer Brown, who lived next door to Dr. Parker. And Mr. Blunt, who was deeply involved in the fraternal organizations. I don't know whether he was I don't know whether he was a Mason or Pythian.
Right.
I don't. He's really where we had a lot of fraternal organizations.
That's right.
They lived there. Jim Kelly, who was in charge, who was the exalted ruler of the Elks. lived in Smithfield. So Gaylord, who was prominent, plumber, you had your people there who really were the back row, Mabry, who had ran a place downtown, all in Smithfield. That's where most of the people live now. The youngsters lived over in Titusville. Oh, and John Commons, who was one of the biggest landowners who owned the ice house. He lived right there in this area called Smithfield. All the doctors, Dr. Plump.
So this was the old black neighborhood of Birmingham then?
This
The younger people would move to Titusville, is that?
Yeah, they would go to Titusville. John Commons developed that, and that was developed after the war. And it's developed along with North Birmingham.
So then Honeysuckle Circle, Honeysuckle Hill.
Yeah, John Commons owned that property. He sold, and they developed, some other company developed that and sold it to us war veterans.
Okay, was that always black?
I was always black.
Okay.
Yes, that was always black.
Yeah.
And see, you had sections like North Birmingham. That was all around the plants, always black.
Right.
And Woodlawn. Woodlawn, between First Avenue and First Avenue South, you would go all the way to the railroad track. The railroad track separated us from them. And we would go back down to the lower end of the railroad track. We lived there. And most of those people were working in the houses. And like the South Side, where Alderman High School is, was big community.
Right.
And they were working as day workers for the people on that side this side of the mountain.
Right.
And see, the Mountain Brook man was just youngsters.
Sure. Yeah. Birmingham was rather unique in that regards. It appears anyway that black people lived in pockets all over the city. Whereas if you go to northern city, Chicago, they lived in one area, south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And they eventually would move to other
No,
places.
we had pockets. The reason we had pockets is just like Innsbruck. I can't remember nothing but black people living outside of what is now the city of Innsbruck. It was a heavy Italian population that lived in the downtown and ran the stores. But around the fringes where Frenchtown is today and where Tuxedo Heights today, it was blacks.
Right.
The plant.
Right.
Then you had all the plant workers in the Edgewater and that section, all Westfield, heavy.
Mugger.
Don't leave it out. See, I could name all.
And if you come back around to the other side, you got Winona, Ishkuda,
You see
all based upon the plants.
on the plants. And you see, when the plants closed down, they sold them the houses. That's why I like to go through there and look at the tin tops. And then that was your making of the city. And that's why we were known as Jones Valley.
That's right.
And see, where Arlington is now, mud, the mud's on all of that. And that was Eagleton.
That's
And
right.
Eagleton was your first big park.
That was Birmingham. That's what
That was
Birmingham
it.
started. Was the
Railroad track. Now, you always remember.
That's right. Those two.
Railroad track.
And City Hall was actually moved from Islington
Yes, sir.
to the downtown. What we call
See,
downtown.
well, people don't like the red clay.
Mhm.
And that's why they gave Titusville to the brothers.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, there is some rich history.
Oh, there's so many people that know so much about it.
Tell me, as a child growing up in Smithfield, what was that like?
Well, it was very rewarding because we kind of knew one another. We were kind of compact. And you see, we had our schools there. We had Lincoln, which has always been Lincoln. We had Industrial High School. We had Hill Elementary School. That was all in Smithfield. Well, yes, that was all in Smithfield because Industrial High used to be located in front of Lincoln in what we call the annex, the shacks.
Yeah, a little white.
Yeah, that was the first. That was the second one. See, the first one I told you was on 11th Street and 8th Avenue.
That 11th Street and 8th Avenue, that's where the first
That's first, yes.
Parker
Yes, the first
industrial. I mean,
industrial, well, first Negro High School.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm right there.
Okay. And then they moved. Well, did they move it from there?
They moved it from
to
there.
the annex?
Into the annex.
Okay. And then from the annex on
Down.
8th Avenue
Yeah.
and
See, Dr. Parker went to California and saw the Industrial High School building, quote, see, it was stucco.
okay.
And that's where he brought that type of building back to Birmingham, and he was fortunate enough to get it.
What do you remember about your school days? Early school days. Did you start the school at Lincoln?
I started at Lincoln. I stayed there 3 years. I think that's, yes, I stayed there 3 years. And see, if you're counting right, I'm in the Depression. Dead in it.
That's very interesting time.
My father was a shoemaker. His shop was at the foot of the mine in Edgewater. That's where his shop was.
So he was his own boss. He was his
Oh yes,
and
owned the mine's property, and he had a shoe shop there because the miners had to have their shoes fixed.
Let me ask you this. Education-wise, what was his educational level?
He put a year in at Talladega,
Okay.
and evidently after that he got married, and that's where my brother and sister.
Right.
He married Mrs. She was Mrs. McCord's daughter. And Mr. McCord lived across the street from our family house. That he owned the house before, with his first marriage.
Right.
And Mrs. McCord was married to Fess McCord, who was a principal in the county.
Okay.
And so I can't tell you how many years he worked with my brother and sisters were 10 years older than I was. And he was very frugal because he owned that house plus he had 1, 2, 3, 5 other houses.
So he was a business owner then. He
was a business owner.
So he never worked in the mine in the middle.
No.
Okay.
His people owned businesses in Rosedale. They were shoe repairmen from Rosedale. They didn't get no further than from Huttsburg to Rosedale, and he got across the mountain.
Okay.
And he never had a shoe shop here, but he went there. So anyway, when the mines closed, his business was. So he was smart enough to pack us up and carry us to Tuskegee.
Okay.
And he opened a shoe shop in Tuskegee. And from there, I went to the children's house, Chandler's Children's House. And I was on the shoemaker's son there because all other kids, people, were doctors out to the Veterans Hospital. And so I was outside.
No.
But I knew, my mother knew a prominent family in Tuskegee. And it's how I got in there.
Why did they decide to move to Tuskegee rather than to?
It's depression. He didn't have no work.
But why? What was the attraction of Tuskegee? Why not Montgomery?
No. You smart man. Only shoes gonna be in schools. And Tuskegee was a big school. And then people had to have those shoes repaired.
So there was.
And he's the only shoe shop man there. And so he got the students used and the ROTC.
So that was
He
a
had
method
that
to-
3 years.
Yes.
We was there 3 years, and he died in 3 years, had a heart attack. And I was 10 years old then.
What was your mother's educational level?
She had finished 2 years in Wilberforce. So at that time, you couldn't teach school and be married
As a woman.
as a woman.
So
So she couldn't teach school.
did she
She
work?
supplied, I think, sometime. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to ask my older friends about that.
Did she do any other work outside of the home?
Not while we were Tuskegee, no.
What about in Birmingham?
Well, after he
Well, yeah,
died,
after he died,
she got a job.
Did you move back to
We
Birmingham?
moved back to Birmingham,
And then
and
she
she got a job at Industrial High School.
Okay, so she was teaching at
My
industrial.
uncle was assistant principal then,
Mhm.
and Dr. Parker was still there.
Right. Now Parker, Industrial High School at the time was termed the largest Negro high school in the world. What was that experience like, your high school years?
I was very fortunate in the fact that I had lived with that school all my life. My uncle was assistant principal. Dr. Parker was the principal. It was one of his jobs. You see, he had finished Wilberforce. He went to World War I. He was a first lieutenant. I was above average, as you see. He received his master's degree from Columbia. And there wasn't too many of them with master's degrees at that time. So Dr. Parker made him the assistant principal. So that, and see, my father was dead. So we moved in with my grandmother and my uncle and stayed there.
I see.
That's why I say I was involved in it. I knew about him, how he would make the schedules and all of that, and knew all that.
So you were actually being influenced.
That was my vicarious learning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that then put you in a position that most other children would not have in terms of having that experience to sit and watch, whether it was intentional or not. Nevertheless, it would have.
I was just fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, everybody at that time in my family had an education, or partial.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Even I told you, my grandmother, even though her mother was a slave, she attended Selma University.
Right.
And Selma University was just what it was, Selma University, as far as that is concerned. And the weakness of it, Doctor, you know about.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And it just went out of business the other day.
Yeah, that's right. I've heard that there are plans to try to bring that back.
There are some things that need to be brought back, and some things need to be left behind.
That's right.
And I don't know which one it is because I'm not in that area.
What kind of extracurricular activities were you involved in high school?
None. I was
What kind of student were you?
a pretty good student. Pretty good student because with a grandmother and uncle, I had to get the lesson. And I couldn't do nothing wrong. So I was pretty good student.
If I had to ask you to name one or two things that stand out in your mind that would remind you of your days at Parker at Industrial High, what would it be?
When I was there,
When you were there as a student?
well, we were tough in football.
Mm.
You see, we didn't know anything about basketball because we didn't have any place to play except in the lunchroom.
Mm.
And I used to go to all the games with Mom because I was a little guy.
Right.
And the comradeship.
Mm. Mm. Do you remember it being massive?
No, we just, and you see, it was comfortable for us. But where you had 2 seats, there was always 3 in them. And we'd split them. We'd share a rail. We'd ride, what you call ride the horse.
Right.
And everybody had to ride the horse for a while. So it might have been my week to ride the horse. I mean, sitting in the middle.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Now, what happens after you finish high school?
After I finished high school, there wasn't no doubt about where I was going. I never had a choice. It was Wilberforce. So I left and went to Wilberforce. My grandfather was deceased then, but he eventually became a presiding elder, and he was the presiding elder over the Birmingham district at St. John. And I went to Wilberforce and stayed a year. And in that July, I had to book up.
Wow. They drafted you?
Yes. I was 18.
And what was that experience? Now, you left Birmingham, Alabama. You've gone to Wilberforce to stay.
Yeah.
Now they're drafting you into the Army.
Yeah.
And you were going into the Army.
Right.
What was the transition like?
It was something you had to do. I had no choice. And I was glad to go.
So, how long did you go overseas?
Yes, I stayed 18 months in the Philippines. I went to camp from I came home that July the 4th because we had a picnic. And on July 5th, I left. Going to the Army. I went to camp Fort Benning. And from Fort Benning, I went to Camp Lee, Virginia. And from Camp Lee, Virginia, I was gone to Leyte.
So you spent 18 months?
18 months in Leyte. And I went over as a company clerk. And we were walking down the streets in Tocloban, Leyte, 4 clerks. And one of the fellows heard, who was the company clerk too, had a big spielgraphic camera on. And we were walking down the street, and out walks the provost marshal. And he saw him with that spielgraphic camera. And he was a fanatic. He took us out of the laundry platoon and made us MPs. So we were the first 4 black MPs in the Philippines. And I never went back to the company again. Because he set a dark room up so he could develop his pictures and had us down there on patrol on Leyte.
Right.
So my experience there was very, very good. I stayed there a year.
What year was that?
I was 44, 45. I got out in 46.
Okay. And then after you got out of the military, you
I
came
had
back to
been,
Wilberforce?
and see, that's where the catch came. I had been, as I told you, in Camp Lee, Virginia.
Right.
I had an aunt who was a musician with the Sweethearts of Rhythm. And she appeared at the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C., which was at the foot of the hill of Howard University. And I saw them big lights.
That was it.
By Wilberforce. Come on, Howard.
Howard University.
Yes, and I stayed there 3 years and 2 summers. It took me some time. I just didn't walk through it.
Yes. And after you finished up at Howard, what did you do?
Well, my uncle had passed.
Hmm.
So my mother was still here working. And my grandmother, my sister, was here too. I came back home.
But did you ever have the idea of not coming back to Birmingham? Birmingham being the city that was the most segregated big city in the country. Many times, I know when I've been away, people will always ask, well, why are you going back to Birmingham? Did you ever have the inclination to remain in DC or to go someplace else rather than return to Birmingham?
No.
Why return to Birmingham?
Well, wasn't another man.
So I would.
So I came back and got a job teaching the first grade in veteran school.
Where? What school?
Veterans.
Veteran school.
Yeah, at the veteran school.
Okay.
GI Bill of Rights.
Oh, okay.
They had the veteran school at the annex.
All right.
And I got a job making $371 a month teaching first grade.
Okay. So that's your first job.
First job with the city.
Mhm. And how long were you there?
Must have been about 6 months.
And then what?
Mr. P.D. Jackson carried me with him to open Weston High School. No, wait a minute. Let me see. No. I left the veteran school, and Mr. Haggard carried me to Thomas School as a physical education instructor. And from there, I went to Weston High School when they opened it up in Israel. Stayed there 14 years.
And what was your position at?
I taught biology and chemistry, and later became boys advisor.
And what was that experience like going from the first grade to Thomas, I guess? Thomas was that elementary school?
Yeah, Thomas was the elementary school in Avondale.
And then finally to high school.
Well, you know what I did at Thomas?
Which,
When I was teaching physical ed, got me some boys and beat Parker's B team basketball.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, first year.
I know that was a highlight.
Yeah.
And when you got to Weston,
Mm-hmm.
it's now Jackson over, Weston over at the
Yeah.
time.
Mr. Jackson had known me all his life,
Okay.
and so it made it easy.
Okay. How was the rivalry between Weston and Parker?
Well, after our first year there in football, they beat the heck out of us first year. Second year, we won. Osdale Pettis was our coach. Fred Horn was our coach. William Mitchell was our coach. And I was standing out in the canal.
Enjoyed every minute.
Yes, sir.
What did you do after Weston?
After Weston, I went to, and it's a funny thing. I must tell you this. At that time, the principals were picked either by, and I would use the word pick because I had heard in my ancillary or vicarious learning that one fellow who was teaching on the staff at Industrial High School went and asked Dr. Parker one day about when when am I gonna be made principal? And they said, Dr. Parker told him, son, you're not ready to be plucked.
So that's where the picking comes in. Yeah.
So I was picked by Dr. Matheson, who was an AME member of my church. I was a member of his church, to go to Bryant Elementary School in Woodlawn. I stayed there 2 years. Mr. Settlers retired from Hudson. And I wanted to know why in the world would they send me out there.
But that's where they sent you.
And that's what they sent me. I stayed out there a year. And it wasn't easy. I had 1,800 children.
This is an elementary school.
It's elementary school. And Mr. Sellers was a good man. And as all old men get when they're good, they get tired. I always remembered that. There was a lot of ends that had to be pulled together, and so I was trying to pull them together. I pulled some together, and I never shall forget. They had an elementary school convention in Las Vegas. I'd never been to Las Vegas. So I went to Las Vegas to the convention, you know, not secondary school, but elementary school principals. And we had a convention in Las Vegas, and I was on my way back home from St. Louis. And when I got on the plane, my seatmate was Tony Shores. He was coming from St. Louis, made connections in St. Louis, and we sat together. And so he told me that it had been rumored that I was going to be the principal at Parker. I wasn't even here when certain things happened. I knew nothing.
But when you returned.
I returned, I heard the rumor. But I heard the rumor on the plane. And I wasn't the first choice. The first choice happened to have been another person who had a heart attack. And I was just the second choice. Oh, hell. That ain't gonna mess up. And that's what made me bite the bit.
You were principal during the demonstrations?
Oh, God. No. I wasn't part of the demonstration. I was at Weston.
You were still at, that's right, yes, right. You were at
I
Weston.
was at Weston High School
Mm-hmm.
during demonstrations.
Tell me a bit about that. What, as teacher at the time, the students, of course, were leaving many of the schools, most of the schools, going down to participate. What was your role?
Well, at that time I was a boys' pastor.
Right.
I was deeply in sympathy with what was going on, and I'm gonna tell you why. Yes, I'm gonna give you a picture of what was going on. The movement centered around 7th Avenue, 11th Street, 6th Avenue, 11th Street. Okay? St. James was on the corner of 6th Avenue and 11th Street. Thurgood was on the corner of 7th Avenue, 11th Street. I lived at 619 North 11th Street. So I was in the middle of the movement. And see, Dr. King used to come to our house to use the phone. And the reporters would come to our house because we were right across the street from Thurgood. And that is. And Mr. Coates had a church on the corner.
But I know that it was also, it's been stated by many people that I've talked with, that it was not to their advantage to be involved if they worked for the city.
I did not march. I would make contributions, and other teachers would come and sit on the steps, and I had a son then, and he couldn't talk.
So that says
No. He could sing.
Couldn't talk, but he could sing. Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. So you actually met Dr. King?
Oh, yeah. See, I knew of him because many of my friends went to Boas,
Okay.
and they were classmates.
So that sort of put you into
Yeah,
that sphere
yeah.
when he came.
We were all in the group. They knew me.
Right. How well did you know John Porter?
I did not know Dr. Porter because I was not at Parker, although he's my commencement speaker one or two times. I knew him, and I was at the 6th Avenue person.
Yeah, I know he had been Dr. King's assistant at Dexter when he was in Montgomery. So.
Okay, I heard of Dr. King in Montgomery through a family friend. My family was closely connected to the Trenum family at Alabama State. And Dr. Hardy was heavily involved in the movement in Montgomery.
Right.
And we heard about Dr. King there. And
When did you first meet him? When he came here?
when he came here, I met him at John Drew's house.
Now, you did a study of children that were involved in the movement and those that were not.
Well, at that time, I was working to finish up a master's. And remember, I had a BS degree, which put me in biology and chemistry. I had I was working on a guidance degree because of the boys advising.
Right.
I hadn't even thought about no principal. I had to go back and make that up. So I was sitting there, Dr. Allman, Reba Allman, who was a friend of the family's that I had met many years ago. She was my advisor, and she told me don't bring her the same stuff everybody else brings. So I went out and thought about it, and the movement was going on. So I said, I'm going to make a study of the students of Weston High School. I had to get permission from the board. Make a comparative study of those who participated in the demonstration as compared to the non-participants, to see was there any difference. And it was a null process. It wasn't any difference. They believed in the same thing. Some were freer.
Those
And-
that participated.
Yes. And maybe that, when I look at the whole thing, is one thing I didn't do. I didn't get the age of the parents. That could have been a difference. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes.
I did not fool with the parent structure, which is one of the flaws. But from what I had, we had several instruments there. I don't remember them all, but they're in a study that you probably will read for fun.
Yeah.
And it was nothing different. Most of the people who were actually in the movement, because I told you where I live.
Right.
So I had seen them. And the one thing that we talked about, Mr. Jackson and all of us, we wouldn't let him become involved in it because he was the principal. Okay. And me and Fred would handle that part because we were handling the students every day.
Right.
Okay. And if you would let the principal become involved in it, whatever they disliked, they would take it out regardless.
Right.
But we were the ones that was pacifiers. And so we just told them, said, now you go. Keep going. Don't tear the school up. Now when the fellows would come in like they came in McCall and ran through, the people who were recruiting, quote, they would come in and disrupt the school. Well, no, don't do. We stop them at the door. Now look, if the kids want to go, nobody's stopping them. The door is open, the gate's open, and you're going to cross that street. Because otherwise they'll put you in jail for trespass. So we have an understanding. I never had a problem. Never lost doing that.
You were able to control that portion of it.
Yes, sir.
And it was basically always rather disciplined.
Yes. And I respect their right to demonstrate, even though I couldn't lose my job.
Right.
But I never,
Yeah. Well, that's.
no. See, I went to the first meeting.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it was they had on Enon Ridge. Mrs. Plump was there. And they elected to bring Dr. King in. Because Gardner and Shepherd's work was there.
Did you attend?
I attended, yes.
The other?
Yes, I had to
You was
attend.
right there.
Been in my cycles. I was ready every evening.
Let me ask you, how would you describe in a mass meeting? What was it like, the mass meeting in the churches?
I was there. I witnessed Big Red whipping that police on 6th Avenue on Easter Sunday when Dr. King got put in jail. They carried him to jail, and they had to wait for N.E. Smith to show up. He never showed up in his overalls. 5-ball didn't make it.
He didn't make it.
No. It was exciting. We attended. My buddy was. He's not here now.
Tell me about Big Red. What happened?
The woman.
Yeah.
The woman. You saw her on television. That's when they were going up 6th Avenue, heading for the park. Okay, on Easter Sunday. The police were out there. The dog was out there. Somebody across the street from 6th Avenue, this is on the north side now, I'm talking right across the street from St. James, threw a rock out there. And the police ran up and grabbed Big Red. And that woman whooped them 2 police.
So she did.
Yes, sir. She was strong. She lived on the second house to the right. I used to know because she comes to the store. We all call her Big Red. She was strong.
Did they arrest her?
Yeah, they arrested her. But she fought like dog.
So she
Oh,
got
they
a
were
reputation
tired.
then.
They didn't stick around. They didn't stick. We had no more trouble. Oh, yeah, a lot of people. There wasn't much hiding. We used to go down when they would turn the water on 16th Street. Me and my buddy. Well, I,
So you guys were rather daring then as teachers of the time, right?
I wasn't there. I wasn't there. We were so restrictive that it was, in other words, it was a place for everybody.
Hmm.
They always needed money.
Right.
Okay? If you couldn't actively get out there and demonstrate, you could actively give money. And there was a lot of money shifted.
So a lot of money needed.
There was a lot of money needed because they had to go get them out of jail, and Riles couldn't get them all. See, Riles ran the vending company. He bonded most of them out.
There were some people that actually put up their houses and stuff. Did you know of any people that?
I did not know.
Mhm.
I was not in on that section.
I think I've probably interviewed 2 or 3 people that talked about that.
Well, I didn't know.
Whether they were involved.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I would assume I knew W.E. Shawbridge. Most of it was the treasurer.
Right.
And I knew Pinky. We're neighbors now, still close. Yeah, I knew
Right.
most of them.
Was it your ambition to eventually become principal of Park?
No, I had not given that a thought. What I had given thought was that I had spent my years at Weston, that I hoped I would have an opportunity when Mr. Jackson retired to have that school.
But you had not really thought about
I was scared to death when I heard the rumor. I was scared
it.
because I didn't like to be a failure,
Mm.
and I just didn't think that I could capably do that.
How did it work out? How did you evaluate your
Well, I
those first days, what was it like coming into Parker?
I knew all the teachers. I knew all the teachers. My mother had taught there. My uncle had been principal there. I knew Mr. Johnson and his family well. And it did not put me in an awkward position because I never tried to belittle anything that had ever been done there. I never mentioned Mr. Johnson's name all the while I was there. I told him it's going to be some changes because I got to change. And the only thing we can do is either change with us or get run over by the change. And that's all I ever said. And I had to scuff.
Was Major Brown there? Were you there or was it
No,
Mr.
Major.
Wells? Mr. Wells?
No. Major had left and gone to the board. Carlton had left and gone to Carver. The Lord must have loved me. He left me with Cap. And Herman was there. And that's where in that section I went in. And Mr. Points, Rufus Points, went in as board's advisor with me.
There were noted individuals that came to Parker from Booker T. Washington.
I don't know if he okay now. I saw Lord Halifax from England, and I only saw the picture of Mrs. Roosevelt. She was there, but everybody came in. And you see, we used to have to sing. Bass on one side, tenor on one side, sopranos in one section, good, and we all had uniforms.
So you were in the choir?
No,
Oh, you mean this whole student body?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, tenor sat on one side of the auditorium, bass sat on the other side, the soprano sat in one section, the alto sat in the other section, and we all had to sing, and then the choir had to sing.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. You were seated.
I call them the boys. The little bitty boys all on one side, no.
That's quite interesting. What do you, I noticed in your thesis, you made some recommendations as far as the school was concerned, what you could do with the information that you were getting. Was any of those recommendations ever?
Oh, you got to tell me which one you talking about.
Well, you said that you thought that was a necessity. It would be good if they start to offer a course in psychology, I believe, for 10th and 11th graders so that they would be able to understand themselves better, the changes that will take place.
I probably did. You got to remember my background was that. Maybe I was thinking about conflict resolving techniques.
Right.
That by being in the boys advisor job, I saw some things that we need to talk about rather than react to. And maybe that was what I was really thinking about in that instance.
Right. If you had to do all over again, what would you change about your career?
I wouldn't take the chance of trying to live another way. I took too many chances getting here.
Yeah. So you wouldn't take that chance.
I wouldn't take that chance. I couldn't walk the same walk.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk the same talk, so I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust myself.
How well did you know Shelley as you were coming through?
I was fortunate to understand other things other than education. I could have been on the wild side. I knew a lot of people. And it's not because I knew them before I was principal. I knew them as a person. I lived my life here. I've seen things go, come, develop, blow.
So you always retained the relationship with the people that you knew as you were coming up.
I haven't changed. I haven't changed.
And did you get any criticism about that from your peers in the profession?
Only those persons who were jealous. I was never gregarious. I've made a lot of mistakes. I wish I could correct some of them, but then you can't go back.
Well, you learn from those mistakes.
You learn not to make the same ones.
Right.
You're gonna make some more.
That's right.
No, I'm not gonna change anything. But I tell you, the hardest time I had, was doing integration.
But Parker was not integrated.
I don't know
body.
what you see. There you go. There you go. I didn't say they were integrated. I said during the integration.
What transpired that made it so difficult at that time?
Okay. When I got there, as I told you, my faculty was old. When I said old, I mean had been teaching a long time.
An experienced
good,
faculty.
Yes. I was scared. I had to look. I was calling Mr. Visit. I didn't walk in there and say, hey, I don't know who's that. within 4 years' time, the top people on my staff had retired.
So 4 years. And why were
Integration came in then. See, watch what I'm telling you. They would not take, when they integrated, they took the best teachers, the middle teachers, the ones who were just learning how. See, it takes 3 or 4 years to develop. And they took those teachers and integrated them into the white school and sent me brand new white teachers.
You know, inexperienced white teachers. So in effect, they took the best black teachers out of the black school, put them in the white school,
I must say.
and they took young, inexperienced white teachers and brought them to black schools.
And I am not saying that some of them did not develop, but that wasn't the case. Many of the ones that they brought in, and you see, they didn't ask me.
So you had no choice.
They asked them.
So as principal, you had no choice in the matter.
Not during this time. They would bring the teachers out to your school to see if they wanted to teach them.
Oh, if they wanted to teach them. What was the impact of that upon discipline in the school?
What did I tell you? That was the hardest thing, right? The black teachers who were just moving up into upper echelon were saying I was favoring the white teachers. When I was trying to make the white teachers settle down and associate with black teachers. That's a struggle.
So you're the man in the middle.
God, tell me about it.
So how did that impact upon then the way that you viewed education from that point on?
I had developed upper level set. You see, when I say I had developed, I had worked with the ones that I knew structurally were sound. And I was dependent on them, which I had worked with. And I had to take some good white teachers and move them into that circle. And that's how we overcame the problem.
What would you say would be how would you evaluate the system of integration as it evolved in education in the Birmingham school system as it relates to whether it improved education or adversely affected it?
Let's lay premise one. You must sell education. You must sell first education. You must sell yourself. Because you got to sell a product that you are trying to share.
Who you selling it to?
And children. If you don't sell it, they don't get it. When you walk in your class, you got to sell that chemistry. You got to sell it. You got to show them where that's going to make a difference in their life. They'll get it. But if you walk in there, put it on the board and say, there it is, they ain't going to get it. That's what you had to learn. That's what the old teacher had.
Did the young teacher not have that?
I had to sell it. I had to sell it to them.
You had to sell it to the
Teachers. So they could sell my product.
how effective were you in selling it to teachers?
I can
integration?
never measure the products out there in the street. You have to measure.
How would you?
I had to sell it to the white teachers.
Right.
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
You see, most black people have a tendency to bond with black people. I had to bond white with black. Because you can't teach nothing that you don't love. You can't love it and you ain't teach it. I think that's a problem we have today. Nobody is selling it. I don't say, it's a wrong statement. Somebody's always doing something, but it's not being sold. You see, education is a product. And you got to be the product. I can sell a bunch of what you call it. I was a real estate man too. I was a real estate broker.
So you're saying the system as it developed under segregation had a better sales force than you would initially.
It had a more dedicated sales force.
Mm-hmm.
It had a more dedicated sales force. Because those persons had been through the wars. They knew hard times.
Some said we were better off after the schools were integrated.
I'm not gonna buy that. I'm not gonna buy that. Call them who's selling product.
As a system, how would you say?
Out of selfish. I'm gonna sell my product. I never worried about what they were doing. I didn't have one school I was selling against. I picked one school out. And the superintendent called me in about that and told me to stop. Because I was out selling. That was Ramsey. I was getting more of the upper folks that I was selling. I was sending them to West Point. I was sending them to Annapolis from Harvard.
And he asked you to stop.
Yeah, told me I was waiting for him. I sold so much, you would be surprised. You ask somebody about the SETME program.
SETME?
SEC, the Southeastern Consortium for Minorities in Engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Still that pocket now. I took that and whipped them because I could let them come from out of my school zone into that program. I had astronauts on the program. Oh man!
So you had a system that you had developed in order to be able to.
I had to survive, and I was going to be measured by my product. Whenever you all going to measure, I don't know when. And I didn't want to fall short.
So whatever it took.
I do it. I said it. That's the hardcore in me.
Well, I've heard a lot of your former students who said that you did what it took to get them where they are today. Yeah. And I guess that's that end product that you're talking about.
Yep. Well, got some everywhere.
Yeah.
Even West Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
Might have sold them, oversold. Can't tell.
But is there anything else that you would just like to leave at this point in relationship to education or Birmingham development or whatever? That you just like to throw out to?
I think, yeah. I'm going to say this as a person who participated in education. I'm no authority in no way. Well, we got to restructure our whole educational program. nothing but wine and whiskey when it's old, it's supposed to be good. We can't grow without growing. What I'm saying is that, like doctors, every so often they have to go back and revitalize themselves and re-energize themselves. Well, as teachers, we're gonna have to do that too. We're gonna have to learn what is needed out here, and we're not doing it. You see, we took the tenure law away from where it was supposed to have been and placed it where we wanted it. The tenure law never was supposed to be in public education. It was supposed to be in academia in the colleges. So a person of an independent thought could teach without the fear of losing his job. We took it and we made it secure for the teachers. Now, I look like a fool finding a teacher, and hell, she's not on trial, I'm on trial.
It's a reflection of your administration.
Yeah. It costs $55,000 just to terminate a teacher, right today.
It costs $55,000.
$55,000, lawyer fees, time consuming and all that. That's what it costs to terminate one teacher when they could easily do it. How? To measure the teacher's product. That child sitting in there is there for a reason, and you've got to get his attention. You've got to motivate him. You've got to get him to learn. If he doesn't learn, you are a failure. And if you fail enough children, you ought not to have that job. And that's what it is. That's the only thing gonna make it.
Where do we go wrong at?
BDA. Tenure.
Some would say that the lobbying forces of the labor unions actually assisted the teacher.
We don't have a representative nowhere. You don't have one in Congress.
We mean,
I'm talking about me. I don't have a representative in Congress. I don't have none downtown. Money. I want product. I know we bought out. I know they ain't gonna pass no legislation down there giving away the tenure law when Paul Hubbard and all of them put them duckers in their farm to do what they're gonna do with it. I don't know what they do with it.
is there anybody that is willing to talk about that as in education today? About the necessity to look at, to rethink the tenure law? Is that an ongoing discussion today?
I don't discuss it. This first time I discussed it with anybody.
I mean, are other people doing it? Anybody else?
I don't know about it, because I don't discuss it.
Hmm.
I don't let nobody discuss education with me.
Hmm.
I'd like to tell them. But if I tell them that, I got to tell them some other things.
Has anybody come to you and asked you?
They know not to.
Because they may not. Why do they know not to?
Because I'm not going to interfere with what they're doing. I know it's wrong. Now, when my cup runneth over, I'm going to get me a photo. I don't know when. I can't tell you. I'm mad at my children that I have. I want my children to be out there doing so. I don't know derelict, not derelict, I'm not going to call them that. Some old disappointed old man or old woman sitting up there telling me what to do. And I know damn well they ain't done nothing. Fattening their pockets. Young people need to be up here running. I'm very angry.
You saying some people staying too long?
Oh, yeah. Shh.
Seems as if you're rather ticked about that.
I am. I am.
And that's obviously a very serious topic.
I'm a serious person. Saw about it.
Mm. But you are seeing now, you're witnessing something that you don't like what you were seeing.
I'm telling you the truth.
And is there anything that can be done about it? Because if this continues, then we don't get better, we just continue to get worse. So is there any way to?
Doctor, do you ever sometime in your leisure read about the Aborigines in Australia?
Yes, I have.
You know that. See, you all know intelligent than I am about those things. But they took the Aborigines, and they put them on welfare, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they?
That's right.
Now they want some more of their land, right?
That's right.
So they pay them off on welfare. They get drunk. Now, a lost tribe, they had talent. It's no good. Same thing.
Mm.
We are, unless somebody turns.
Do you see that happening?
No, one about tell the truth.
That's what is tragic.
Jesse Jackson not going to tell you the truth.
And then there are some people who are out there.
They want it to be this way so they can make a pimp's living.
What about some dissident voices that may be out there? What would the system do with them?
If you're in education, you're not in education just because it's in Birmingham. How do the Chinese educate their children? How do the Japanese educate theirs? How do the Germans educate theirs? How do the Africans that you have encountered in colleges, why do they always look like they're smarter than you? Because there's best students that come from that.
One of the key ingredients that we find is missing is discipline.
Got to be. Got to be.
And that goes.
But you've got to sell them.
Mm-hmm. But you said something very important earlier is that the youth that's got to sell them is the teacher in the classroom. The teacher had to be sold by the principal who had to be sold. In other words, the process at some point has broken down.
I never worried about a raise. I was not in it for the money. I had a good real estate business, Acma Realty Company. I had good backers, Protective Investment Insurance Company. When I got to be principal of Park, I put the real estate company down. I did not want to do two things. I wanted to concentrate on one. I had to fight. Every day I got up, I had to fight for education and fight to keep my name out of the mud. Because they said I couldn't do it. And I'm going to prove I could. And when I got to the point where it was no more fighting, I told them, bye. I'll be the same. I ain't looking back. I ain't been over that neither. But it burned me. If I would tell some teachers too old to be teaching, because they don't know what the hell they're teaching. Because we don't need that no more. We need something else. We need megabytes or something. I don't know what you need, but what you're talking about ain't nothing.
They're not keeping up. That's what you're saying.
Not keeping up.
Review yourself.
Got to. If the same doctor's gonna cut on you, and you don't know where he cutting, you did something wrong. You got to go back. And once you have a proficiency examination for the teachers, you don't have to worry about them. They'll straighten up. Product and proficiency. Instead of giving them to you, every 5 years they have to take a proficiency exam in that subject matter and measure their product. And on those two things hang all the law and their job. You get education.
You may, I mean, that's seemingly very simple to do if it would be done.
Dr. Dale, that's your friend, ain't it?
I know him.
You know, you talk to him?
I haven't seen him lately, but yeah, I've seen him.
You know what his buddies told him on me? I was over there telling them what to teach. I never told them what to teach. I said, if you teaching English 9, and you teaching English 9, and you teaching English 9, I want all three of you to get together and plan on what you're gonna do. When you get through planning, when it's 3 weeks up, you all need to be in the same ballpark. I tell you what, you all get right together and make out 2 tests, an A and a B test, and each one of you give your students a test. Man, that man came over there and like to kill me. They tell me you tell them what to teach. Oh, shit. No.
Was that the first time that you had been approached like that?
Oh, they always accused me of being a dictator on telling them what to teach. I know what I was going to do. They knew I was going to measure them.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to do.
Well, you know, when we were in school, we always said the mean teachers, those hard teachers were the mean teachers, and those are the ones that we look back on and say that, you know, they did the best job.
Dr. Hunt, the only thing that I was trying to do, when I found out when we went on the trimester program, the best program the school could be on, the best program. There's no better program, because a teacher can't move for no 2 hours.
Right.
He can move for an hour.
That's right.
But for 2 hours, man, he got to have something going on. I found one teacher on page 27 and the other one on page 200. They ain't no way in the hell you tell me somebody ain't wrong. Either the 200 lady ain't doing that or the 27 ain't doing that. But they ought to be together. Those are the little things that you look at.
You know, you obviously would have some answers to some of the difficulties that we're having now. If the superintendent came to you and asked you, what do you think about what's going on, and if you had any suggestions, what would you do?
Let me see if he's still over you. Dr. Thompson, is he still over James Thompson?
I don't know.
Who's the superintendent at Gross? I would talk to Lydia. She's evaluated me. I don't know what, I wouldn't see no need of talking to somebody that wouldn't understand what I would be saying.
I see what you're saying. So the problem is deeper than just what is happening.
I would not be criticizing.
Sure.
I'm not criticizing. You have not heard me criticize.
No, I understand.
And I hope you don't get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
You see, that's why I wouldn't appeal with Shelley.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I get carried away and I'm gonna tell the truth. And I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings because I don't have to.
Right.
And whatever they gonna say about me, whatever I say, ain't gonna change it.
Mm-hmm.
So why go out on a limb? But there are certain things that can happen.
Put it in place and they could start a correction process.
I wouldn't mind being with you, in your little auditorium if you had the right people.
Right.
But I ain't no down who Metropolitan Guard and them folks. You please.
Yeah.
Would they understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely not.
Now, if I thought, I'm gonna tell you, when Dr. Lamont took over, he came out to my house and sat with me an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him just like I'm talking to you. I told him the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, whatever I said that was good, use it. And all he didn't think much of, throw it out. Because it didn't work for me sometimes, and it ain't gonna work for you. But I told him one thing. You've got to get some men in this system.
You're right.
That's jump one. And they all can be in athletics. So I don't know. I don't know where it's gonna be.
Well, you've been very helpful to me today because you enlightened me in terms of giving me a little more foundation on Birmingham, just through personal discussing your personal concerns in your life, because I think that's part of the foundation that we need to know, that other folk need to know, and we can learn from those.
You got to get the right messenger to carry to them.
Sure.
There hasn't been a real messenger in Birmingham. And Lord knows, I think a lot of the mayor, I think he's a fine person. But he's slipping.
Yeah.
He's not listening to what's going on around him. And he's letting the money hungers get him.
That's
And I feel sorry for him. I'd have long since blew the whistle on him. But I like him.
Yeah.
And he ain't lived no child life. Me, I know all about it.
Know where it came from.
Oh, please. If you want some dirt? Ask Shirley, what do we know to do? But I don't hold that against nobody. Only thing that I hold against a person is that to make a fool out of somebody else and then laugh at them. And Jesse Lewis has made a fool out of this city and laughing at him. Now, that might be your friend, I don't give a damn.
Yeah. Well, the truth is a light.
Well, that's the truth, in my estimation. I can be wrong. I really enjoy working, just like I told you. I'll work with you, and we can get this educational thing going. But I just don't believe in giving nobody that's going to misuse something.
Right. Well, I'm really excited about the possibilities, and
all you got to do is put the perimeters down, then we fill in, and then I will carry you to the source.
Well, after next week,
Okay.
my final exam is next Thursday.
What are you teaching this week? What's your course you teaching this?
African American history, 20th century.
I wouldn't know about that. I
So,
don't know where y'all teach from.
oh,
No, what I'm
Textbooks?
talking about in.
textbooks.
Yeah. See, I was a fool, Doc. I
Oh.
thought the books ought to be integrated.
Well,
And the only reason I thought that is that I wouldn't know what is going on in, quote, the black community unless I knew what was going on in the white community.
right.
But I found out that it doesn't make any difference because it never penetrates one another. So it might be better to know.
Yeah. Well, see, it's my contention that we know what's happening in the white community.
Not when it happened, though.
No, not when it happened. I'm talking about historically, over time.
Okay.
We get that because that's what's historically has been in our school systems.
Yes.
Whereas we did not know what was happening in the black community from a historical perspective,
Right.
unless we were there in terms of textbooks.
Right.
So if we know one, don't know the other one. Now that we've learned one, let's learn the other, and then at some point,
Try to mix
we'll
it.
be able to pull them together.
See what
But
influence
at
it.
this point,
Yeah.
we have not gotten there, so we can't do
We
it.
don't know enough.
No, right. So that's been my argument as to
Well,
the necessity to have.
I can see it. I can see it because you see, I had some good professors at Howard, Hope, and Franklin.
Yeah.
I never took it that far. My work was over in the philosophy department and down the hill in the sciences, not social studies.
Right.
And just think, I went to school with that damn Demetrius Newton. He was the Wilberforce when I
Yeah, that's
came
right.
back.
That's right.
When I came back.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did come back and stay a year.
Right.
And then I went to Howard.
Oh, okay. Oh, you came back and stayed here?
I stayed here and then I went to Howard. Because he was there then. That's right.
Mm.
I did do that.
Right, right.
And then I went to Howard. When they split, that's when it was. The church split from the state.
Okay.
Wilberforce Central State.
Oh, I see.
That's
I
what
see
it
what you're
was.
talking about.
That's what it was.